There's been a lot of talk of book overconsumption in the book community, which is not all that surprising given the amount of unhauls and hauls we keep seeing and the fact that they keep getting bigger and bigger. It's gotten to the point that some people say that the only way you should read a book is from the library, and bookshelves lining your home should not be aspirational. People are critiqued for buying books that they don't even really want to read, and people start wondering if book overconsumption is a real problem, not only harming the people buying the books, but also possibly harming the environment. This conversation all exists within a small bubble though, and the reality is, even though we are recognizing an issue coming from being perpetually online and being able to see everyone else all the time and everything they're doing, book overconsumption is just not a problem that even comes close to reaching other problems that we see environmentally, like fast fashion or eating beef 3 times a day. For example, the book industry is worth billions, the fast fashion industry is worth trillions. It's not comparable on that level, although not saying that there's no impact at all, but I'm going to get more into that in a second, and then I'm going to tell you what the issue people are seeing really is and why it's not the one that's on surface level. The average American buys 70 items of clothing a year, which is way higher than we used to in the past, while the average household buys 14 books a year. Now, these 14 books are not per person, but rather per household, and the average American household is 2.5 people. So that means that per person, we're really only seeing book sales of about 5 to 6 books a year per person in the United States. I know we're not all American, these are just the stats that are easy for me to find where I am right now. Also, as far as the environment goes, recycling books is actually a lot easier than a lot of other discarded items because books are made of mainly paper. You will oftentimes have to take off like a hard cover, but other than that, it's pretty easy to recycle books because of the composition of books. In fact, recycling books and pulping books is kind of common for books that are not wanted anymore. And I know we hate the destruction of books, but there are some outdated textbooks and some books that just don't have any readership anymore. And when you're talking about the environmental impact, it's important to note that the recycling of books is so much easier than so many other things. For example, clothing oftentimes is a blend of a lot of different materials, some of these materials being synthetic that are not biodegradable. So the labor to recycle clothing is going to be very heavy. There's oftentimes chemical processes in this, and all of this becomes really expensive, meaning we have piles of clothes all over the world that no one's going to clean up and take care of. But books just are not a problem to that extent. Not to say that there's never piles of books that are discarded that no one's taking care of. It's just not on the same level, and you don't have to personally feel bad for going to Barnes & Noble and buying the newest copy of Fourth Wing. In fact, the books that are being discarded and recycled and pulped on a mass scale are more often to be old textbooks, not the newest bestseller in the romantasy genre. So the fact that we're not making an environmental impact that's comparable to things that we really need to consider when we're talking about protecting our earth does not mean that watching people buy books that they don't necessarily intend to read isn't annoying and isn't showing a real problem that we want to delve into. And this is a problem of overconsumption for sure, because people are buying more and more popular books that they see online. They're buying 40 books at a time. They're not looking at what the book is about before putting it in their cart, and they're swiping their credit card too frequently sometimes. And the best of people fall into this. There's no hate on any individual. There has been times where I have done this exact same thing, where I have gone in, seen a book on my feed 100 times while I'm doom scrolling, and I just buy a book because I know people like it, even though it's not a book that I necessarily have any real interest in reading. I just feel like I'm going to like it because everyone likes it. Everyone does this. It's not anything to put shame on any one person. But some people are confusing this with other things just that aren't a problem. Owning a lot of books is not a problem. People have been owning 1,000 book libraries for generations, and it has been something that has brought a lot of happiness and a lot of fulfillment to a lot of people's lives. People have owned multiple editions of the same book for many generations. That has always been the thing that collectors and really big book nerds and bookworms have done when they have a favorite book and they want to see every way that this book has been made. There's been plenty of people before the internet was really a thing to the extent it is now that owned multiple copies of something like Lord of the Rings. There has also always been people who are really into books that prefer owning their own library and curating what they have more than going to the library. Not to say that they don't, they might do both. Just as a little anecdotal demonstration of what I'm trying to get at in a minute here, I'm going to talk about this guy named Guy who published an article in 2003. He was having a conversation with his daughter's friend, and his daughter's friend asked him, "Why do you have so many books?" He owned thousands of books of his collection. There was some of the critiques that came up in this that people always talk about with book readers, like you have multiple of the same book, you don't use the library, and he responds to this in 2003, which is not when we have all of this TikTok hype and doom scrolling sensation, so this is prior to all of these events that we're discussing right now. In one excerpt, he talks about owning multiple of the same book. He says, "Still, you will find on my shelves the same title in several editions. It's true, collecting different editions is something collectors do, but it's also the practice of a die-hard reader." In another, he discusses why he chooses to have his own personal collection of over 1,000 books instead of just using the public library. He says, "But why not use the public library? Why not sell off these books and rely on the branch 2 blocks away? In fact, I visit the branch almost every day it opens. I love the public library, its librarians, its shelves, and books. I borrow heavily. I find, however, that the public library serves the general public and cannot cater to all of my personal tastes. It does not provide the older editions that I want, nor the more obscure titles. While I wouldn't want to live in a neighborhood without a public library, I couldn't be content without a collection of books that met my specific needs." I think a lot of us would agree, maybe not everyone, but a lot of us would agree that there's something nice to the idea of collecting books that really show who you are and what you like over a lifetime. There's almost something romantic to that. What bothers us is when people buy books indiscriminately that they might not even want to read just so that they can have a 40-book book haul. And this is getting at no one specifically, we all fall into this sometimes. And honestly, it's not so much the quantity of the books that's the problem. I don't think it bothers us when someone who loves reading and has been reading for decades has a large home library. I think that's something that most of us find positive. What bothers us is when one viral bookshelf starts to look a lot like another viral bookshelf because we're all buying the same books. Owning a lot of books and curating your shelves has been popular for generations. What's new is buying 40 books from the same genre. Its genre might be like romantasy right now, and then putting it on your shelf so that you fit in with everyone else you see online. No dig on romantasy, I actually like romantasy quite a bit and read it all the time, but the point still stands. To be honest, I don't even think having a certain amount of unread books is even a problem. I always like to have around 30-ish unread books at a time. It gives me a sense of adventure, that there's something waiting for me when I get home. Some have argued that having unread books in the home is very beneficial, not just for the sense of adventure it fosters, but also remembering your own limitations and remembering how much you have not yet experienced yet as a human and how much is out there. It's always better when people are humble enough to know just how much they don't know, rather than assuming that they have experienced everything the world has to offer. The problem really is buying books that you're not interested in because you feel like you should be. A book might be really hyped and a lot of people might enjoy it and it might be a TikTok sensation, but that does not mean that you're interested in it or that it belongs in your personal library. Before the internet kind of took off and put us all in the same little bucket, having your bookshelf was curating something that meant a lot to you and showed a lot about you as a person and a lot about your own soul and your own sense of what you enjoy in reading. And oftentimes this was eclectic. You didn't stick to one genre. You didn't buy an author that everyone else liked but you're not really into. This was not a thing. You bought what you wanted. You didn't just buy the book that you saw 100 times while you were doom scrolling. To some extent, everything I said is a complete oversimplification because reading has always been associated with the middle class, and amongst an everyday person, there were oftentimes books on a bookshelf just to elevate your own social status to an extent, and oftentimes there were popular books that did get on everyone's bookshelf. So that's always been a thing. But as a die-hard reader that's reading every day of your life, you should be cultivating your own personal taste. If you aspire to or have a very large bookshelf and a very large collection of books, I hope the best for you. That sounds amazing. You're not destroying the environment single-handedly. You don't need to feel that way. But what I really hope for you is that you are creating something that you love and enjoy as a person and not just throwing all of your books that you've seen online into a cart and purchasing them right away. You are unique, and your bookshelf should not necessarily look like someone else's. You might have like a bookshelf twin, that could happen, but it shouldn't just be everything that's popular. It should be what speaks to you. And this does not necessarily mean you stick to a genre. This doesn't necessarily mean that a book needs to be popular. The best bookshelves, in my opinion, are eclectic. They show that you like fantasy, you like contemporary books, you like sci-fi, you like nonfiction. It's not the end of the world to admit that you like a self-help book or to say that you like stoicism, even though you're mainly a Brandon Sanderson fan. And if you really do just like one genre, that's great too, but make sure that's actually what you're meaning to do and that's actually what you want, and that you're not just trying to fall into a group. And a lot of people are actually into one genre. That's okay. Also, don't get into debt for books. Like, make sure that you aren't getting credit card debt over buying lots of books and trying to fit in with people who have the money to buy lots of books. There's something even more of a romantic notion to buy your books over time and to really curate your bookshelf as you change as a person. And if you're buying 100 books at once, first of all, you might not actually be super excited for all of those books. And second of all, are you sure you want to read those same books in 5 years? I don't want to read the same books at 28 that I wanted to read at 20. So all I'm saying is owning books is good, but the best way to own books is to really learn about yourself and the world and what you like, and to curate your bookshelf to be what you want to have in your life and what you really enjoy, and not to fit in with trends. Bookworms have always had books, they haven't always had TikTok. Let me know what your take is on this topic. Do you think that book consumerism is a big issue? Do you think it's the issue for the same reasons I think it's an issue? Or do you have your own take? I am always open to new ideas, and I could be wrong, so let me know what you think in the comments. See you in another video.